indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, have some housekeeping announcements. The First District Court of Appeals graciously allow us to use their facilities. Please respect their rules and absolutely have no food or beverages other than water in this room. Please silence your cell phone. Anyone addressing the commission, please speak up so our recording equipment can pick you up properly. And my fellow commission members, please speak up into the microphone so you can be heard. Members, I'm asking that you be brief and concise as possible, Commissioner Waldman, in your questions and comments, as we have numbers of items for consideration today. Pursuant to section 286.00114 Florida statutes, members of the public have an opportunity to have input on matters before the commission other than cases in which we act in a quasi-judicial capacity. This means that the public can have input on matters other than complaints, opinions, and determination in financial disclosure cases. If you desire to be heard on this matter, please fill out a speaker form and give it to Ms. Fulwood, who has her hand up. Awesome. Now on to the approval of the minutes.
I move the approval of the minutes.
Second.
All right, here, so approved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? So moved. All right, now we're on to item 4. We have before us a pre-probable cause stipulation between the commission advocate and respondent. This matter is being considered in the public session because the respondent, in signing and filling a pre-probable cause stipulation, waived confidentiality. Complaints have the right to comment in writing on proposed stipulation. We have not received any comment from the complainant in this case. After considering all materials and presentation of the parties, the commission may vote to approve or reject the stipulation. As this is a pre-probable cause stipulation, if the stipulation is rejected, we will go immediately into probable cause determination. I recognize the advocate.
At this time, excuse me, I bring before you a pre-probable cause stipulation. Respondent acknowledged that she failed to accurately file her 2020 and 2021 CE Form 1s in violation of Section 112.3145. She did this prior to her hearing. Respondent filed a CE Form 1X, which is an amendment to the Statement of Financial Interest for those years. We asked the commission to accept the respondent's stipulation that she violated Section 112.3145 and recommend a total civil penalty of $1,000. This amount is consistent with recent cases.
Mr. Chairman, I move the advocate's recommendation.
Second.
All right, the advocate, motion has been properly moved and second. All right, is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? See that the motion has been properly moved and second. Thank you. Now moving on to section 5. This matter is a consideration of the advocate's motion to dismiss complaint number 22-110 in the Charles A. Safide case. If the commission grants the advocate motion, the matter will be dismissed. Alternatively, if the commission were to deny the motion, the case will proceed to the Division of Administrative Hearings for an evidently hearing, or the parties could reach a settlement agreement. Will the parties or counsel please identify themselves for the record?
Melody Hadley, Commission Advocate.
Okay. And here on the other side. Ms. Handley, you are recognized to present your motion.
In 2015, the respondent began serving as a member of the Miami-Dade Community Council. That position required the filing of a CE Form 1. And he failed or refused to file his 2018 CE Form 1. Due to that, on or about March 10, 2020, the respondent was removed by the clerk of courts from his position on the council because of that failure to file his calendar year 2018 CE Form 1. In 2022, he ran unopposed for the same seat and currently serves as the chair. Subsequently, on February 1st, the commission issued an order finding probable cause based on the preliminary investigation, stating that respondent had willfully failed to file his 2018 CE Form 1. At the time of the probable cause hearing, we did not know he had already been removed for the same reason by the Miami-Dade County. Respondent has been assessed the only penalty available for his willful failure to file his 2018 CE Form 1. Further pursuit of this matter would not serve the public interest. As such, I ask for the case to be dismissed.
All right, are there any questions from the members? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Move acceptance. Second.
See that the motion has been properly moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? See that it's been properly granted. All right. Now we're on to item number 6. The next agenda item is the consideration of advisory opinions. There are 2 advisory opinions on today's agenda. Any public officer, candidate for public office, or public employee in Florida who is in doubt about the applicability of the disclosure laws or standard of conduct to him or herself, or anyone who has the power to hire or terminate another public employee may seek an advisory opinion from the commission about himself, herself, or that employee. The advisory opinions are based solely on the facts provided by the requester and are largely binding on the conduct of that issue. Is the requester for file 2796 here? All right, Ms. Kathy, you are recognized to present the draft opinion.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioners, this opinion request has been brought to us by a member of the City Council in Cocoa, Florida, Ms. Lorraine Koss. The question presented is whether the council member would have a voting conflict under Section 112.3143 3A Florida statutes if she voted on various matters regarding a septic to sewer conversion project, since her residence would be one of the 88 residences that would be affected. By way of background, Brevard County has adopted a plan, the Save Our Indian River Lagoon project, which consists of multiple projects that are designed to restore the condition of the Indian River Lagoon. The lagoon's polluted, and one of the contributors is the amount of nitrogen that seeps into the lagoon from the residents' septic systems. There are 42 projects areas that have been identified for conversion from septic to sewer connections, and one of these is the J&K Septic to Sewer Conversion Project that will affect 88 residences along Indian River Drive, one of which is the council members. The project would entail constructing a new sewer line along Indian River Drive, removing the existing septic systems from the residences, and constructing lateral lines on the residents' properties to connect the residences to the main sewer line. A half-cent sales tax was implemented by the county for the Save Our Indian River Lagoon project in 2017. At the time of the council members' request for an opinion, there was just over $6 million of this tax money that was earmarked for the J&K Septic to Sewer Conversion Project. However, the maximum amount of the tax can only be obtained if all of the lot owners of the 88 residences agree to convert from septic to sewer. If some of the owners don't agree, then the amount that they could obtain will be reduced proportionally. So as a result, the city plans to make participation in the J&K Septic to Sewer Conversion Project mandatory for the owners of the 88 residences. In addition, at the time of the request, the estimated cost of the project for these 88 residences was between $9.5 and $12 million. So even if the maximum amount of money from that sales tax is obtained, as it currently stands, there would not be enough money to complete this without additional funding. If the city can't secure additional funding, the owners of the 88 residences will be required to pay any remaining amounts of the conversions from septic to tank for their septic to sewer for their individual properties out of pocket. As explained in the draft opinion, the city's estimated the cost of conversion for the 88 residences, estimated cost, and in doing so, it's divided the residences into 4 tiers. Based on the estimated costs, the residences in Tier 1 would have the lowest cost of connection. They're closer to the roadway, less lateral line would be used, that's part of the thing. And the residences in Tier 4 would have the highest costs. There are 18 residences currently in Tier 1 and 88 total residences, as I'm sure you understand, in this project. Since the estimated cost of connection for the residences of Tier 1 would be the lowest, the councilwoman's cost of conversion would be lower than that of the owners of at least 80 other residences in the project. City Council is considering 3 options with regards to the J&K septic to sewer conversion project. The first option would be to move ahead with the project, which would involve mandating that the lot owners of the 88 residences convert from septic to sewer and that they pay any remaining costs for the connection for their individual properties out of pocket if the project's not fully funded. The second option would be for the City Council to vote to withdraw from the J&K septic to sewer conversion project, and this withdraw from this county's project, and this would allow the residents to apply for up to $18,000 per residence for an advanced septic treatment system. Third option would be not to take any action on the matter at this time, which in essence would be to postpone the decision. Under the voting conflict law in section 112.3143, subsection 3A, Ms. Koss would be prohibited from voting on any matter that would inure to her special private gain or loss. Some of the things that we look at when determining whether there would be a special private gain or loss would be the degree to which the interests of all the members of the class would be affected by the vote, and we're looking at an economic benefit or loss, and the degree to which the public officer would receive a greater benefit or harm in comparison to the other members of the class. A vote on option 1, proceeding with the J&K project, would result in a gain because the owners of the residences would receive at least some money for the conversion of their properties from septic to sewer from that earmarked tax fund. However, since the council members' total cost of connection would be lower than that of the owners of at least 70 residences, she would have less money to pay out of pocket than the owners of at least 70 of the residences if the project's not fully funded. As such, a vote on the matter would inure to her special private loss in the sense that she would have to pay less. The draft opinion finds that she would have a special private loss if she voted on this matter, since she would have to pay less out-of-pocket costs than the owners of at least 70 of the residents, 70 of the residences. A vote on option 2 would affect the council member's special private gain or loss because voting on option 2, which is withdrawing from the project, would preclude her receipt of the guaranteed funds set aside for the owners of the 88 residences from the tax under option 1. She would not be receiving a sewer connection that would be at least partially paid for. She'd have the option of applying for up to $18,000 for an advanced septic system, but she would have to apply for these funds and essentially take more steps to get funding that would not be guaranteed than she would have to take under option 1, where a certain amount of funds for the sewer connection would be guaranteed. The draft opinion finds she would have a voting conflict if the City Council were presented with a vote on option 2. Under option 3, the City Council would defer making any decisions regarding the J&K project at this time so that a determination could be made at a later date. The commissions frequently opine that votes that are preliminary or procedural in nature do not create a voting conflict for the public officer. The draft opinion finds that a vote on option 3 would not create a voting conflict for Ms. Koss. Before I submit this to you for your consideration, I do want to mention there is a bill in the Senate that's in committees that would, according to the requester, would provide additional funding for this project. That bill, if anyone's interested, is Senate Bill 1632. At this point, I present this draft opinion for your consideration, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Members, are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the draft and the presentation. Just curious in terms of the procedures that led up to it. I noticed it was the October, November 22 timeframe when this requester originally contacted the office, and you all must have given some telephonic feedback, and then they decided to ask for the formal ruling or formal opinion by the commission. So I'm interested in, she said there was some urgency to it. The 5 or 6 months that have passed since then, have they chosen to delay the vote and waiting on this, or was there any relevancy to the timing?
They have, in my understanding, chosen to delay the vote. Part of the delay is the original facts, if I may go into this. The original facts that Ms. Cost gave us did not include a lot of this, like the differences in the costs. And so we spoke to Mr. Garganese, which you probably have read all the stuff, and got more facts from him. We weren't able to put it on the January meeting. It was drafted, but it needed some revising, and so it's on this meeting, but there's still grant funds available, and if that answers your.
Meanwhile, they know they could abstain and keep the process moving if they followed that procedure.
If I may, about the process, so just to add to what Kathy said, when Ms. Koss called up originally, she gave us a few facts about this, and we thought we had all the facts that we needed to make a call on this. We didn't appreciate that there was a spectrum of tiers of costs that people would get, and that hers would be lower than everybody else. So originally on the phone, we had informed her that it would be no voting conflict. The city attorney reached out to us because he was aware that there were many more facts. He's well-versed in the ethics rules. We had a conference call with them. He supplied many more facts, and after that point, we suggested that, no, indeed, it would be a voting conflict, and that's the way we left it on the phone. After that, she suggested that she wanted to put it before all of you, rather than leaving it at the staff level with us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes, sir.
I just have a question on timing, on issues of this nature. I'm reading here, in light of this, prior to the vote, if it occurs at all, you must publicly state the nature of your interests. Are we saying, or does the process allow for a person with this kind of conflict to be very engaged in the process and driving the direction of the vote, and without declaring that they have a conflict, and only declare that conflict at time immediately prior to the vote?
I believe it would, because she's is this correct? Okay, because she would fall under subsection 3A as a municipal officer. She could speak on the matter.
So, under the voting conflict law, there's 2 sections that would apply to her as an elected local public officer. The first is the prohibition found in subsection 3A. Subsection 3A says she'll have a voting conflict if the vote inures to her special private gain or loss, or to certain other people. And if you have a voting conflict, then you must follow 3 steps. Announce your conflict to the assembly, abstain from the vote, file a voting conflict memorandum within 15 days of the vote with the person who keeps the minutes. She has to do that. There's a second provision that says for appointed officers, and she's not appointed, she's elected. For appointed officers, if they want to participate in the matter, then they have to make the disclosure before they do any participation. She's not under that requirement, so we didn't advise on it. Technically, she could participate. She won't, under the, if you adopt the opinion, she will have the voting conflict. She'll have to follow voting conflict steps.
So at what point does he or she declare their conflict?
She would declare her conflict at the meeting.
At the meeting where the final vote is to be taken? Or any vote is to be taken?
At the votes that move this project along, yeah.
We have a comment from our executive director.
I just want to let you know, in addition, with regard to these voting conflicts, the differences in the requirements of the voting conflict law is a part of your legislative recommendation, where you have asked the legislature to make them more consistent across all types and levels of officials. That is not something that is currently a part of the legislation, but it is in your recommendation, so there are different requirements.
Members, any other question? Do I hear a motion?
I move the adoption of the opinion.
Second.
Properly moved and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? See that it's been approved. Moved on to the next opinion under consideration is file 2797. Is the requester for 2797 here? No. Mr. Steve, you are recognized to present the draft opinion.
May I apologize for not saying through the chair in responding? I'm just getting.
It's okay.
But don't let it happen again. Willie Meggs took note of it. Just think about that for a while.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, this request comes to us from Paul Gibbs. Paul Gibbs is the General Counsel for the Brevard County Public Schools. He makes this request on behalf of many, many officers and employees of the Brevard County Public School District. The draft, under the draft, the facts that were given to us, the superintendent plans to purchase a institutional membership from the Brevard County Alliance of Black School Educators. This is a nonprofit entity. The members and the board of this entity consist almost entirely, is my understanding, of administrators, directors, teachers, and other staff of the school district and the various schools of the school district. The mission of this entity, this nonprofit entity, is to enhance and facilitate the education and social development of all students in Brevard County, with a particular focus on African American students. The nonprofit accomplishes this goal in a few ways. Among the things that they have done, they offer to financially support recruitment efforts to attract minority teachers, and they offer to supply food for teachers who provide after-school programs so that they're willing to do and put on programs for students. The program has also partnered with Head Start programs and by donating things that are needed for the Head Start program. By purchasing an institutional membership, the school district will get a couple of things. First of all, the membership costs $250. What they get for $250 is they get a certificate of the membership, they get an opportunity to have their, to network with fellow educators. The school district gets 2 complimentary individual memberships, which they can give to any administrators or faculty that they like. And they get a link on the school district's webpage for, that the school district can put a link on the webpage of the nonprofit. And then lastly, they get a 20% discount on the organization's paid events. When we got these facts originally, and I think this opinion actually lays out pretty simply. When we got these facts originally, there was one additional fact that made me tell this requester this was the most complicated opinion request that we had ever received. And that was that I was told originally that in addition to all those things that were in the institutional membership, that the school district would also get 2 board seats on the nonprofit. That potentially triggers a whole other set of exceptions that previous commissions have read into section 112.316 of Florida statutes, which are exceptions to conflict of interest provisions that are at issue in this draft. I came to find out late in the process that that was actually not the case, that the institutional membership did not include 2 board seats to the nonprofit entity, which simplified the matter dramatically. We've kept it as a formal opinion before you, just because it's, we had promised the requester that we would make this a formal opinion because of its original complications. But the issue lays out quite simply here. The issues are whether or not the individuals who might be members or board members of the nonprofit will have a conflict of interest if they're also associated with the school district in some way as employees or officers, if the superintendent buys an institutional membership from the nonprofit. For a lot of folks who are members of the entity, they will have a contractual relationship with the entity vis-a-vis their membership. And they'll have a contractual relationship with an entity that is purchasing an institutional membership for their agency. We have said, and I think it's said most cleanly in the conclusion of this draft, there's a lot of analyses that we do under section 112.313 subsection 7A, 112.313 subsection 3 for the superintendent, for administrators, for teachers at the schools or at district headquarters who are either involved in the purchase or are not involved in the purchase, are members of the organization or board members of the organization. There were a lot of different dimensions to all the types of people that might be involved. We summed it up in the conclusion best as those individuals who are board members or are members of the nonprofit, they will have an exception because the purchase costs less than $500. And that will apply to everybody. They will have no conflict of interest under either conflict of interest provision. However, if the school district exercises the 20% discount that I told you about, and they end up spending more than $500 in a particular calendar year, then section 112.316 will kick in for only those members who do not have a public role in the approval process for approving the purchases from the nonprofit. For those who are uninvolved, there's nothing for them to be conflicted about. They don't exercise any discretion over the district's treatment of the nonprofit, and therefore section 112.316 kicks in to say their technical conflict will be negated. For those people who are involved in the purchase, they will not benefit from that exemption. And if the school district spends more than $500, the people who are involved in the approval process of the purchase of the institutional membership and the subsequent expenditures will continue to have a conflict, and they will need to act accordingly. I wish it was more simple than that. We don't get a lot of opinions that have to address so many different people across an agency. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have.
Members, any questions? Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It would seem, for $250, they shouldn't, why doesn't this nonprofit just give them a membership and not charge them, and then there's no issue whatsoever?
I think, for whatever reason, they've decided to do this. The school district, believe it or not, is not the only entity that might be purchasing an institutional membership in the county. Apparently, other private educational institutions for K through 12 students would also be able to make purchases. So I guess to be fair across the board, they are doing that. Regardless, that's what they've decided. Those were the facts that we were given.
Members, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Mine isn't a question, but it's just a comment, maybe for the benefit of the rest of the commission or those who might read this. I had the opportunity to discuss this opinion briefly with Mr. Zerkowski earlier in the week, and the only modification I would make is the same advice he gave me, which was to start at the end. If you read the conclusion of this opinion first, it's much easier, and it makes the rest make a lot more sense.
Okay. Any other comments?
Not that it's not perfectly written.
You know, you're quoting me because I do recognize there's so many different people here. We played with laying this out and going person by person through the district, different job titles, and this opinion would have been 20 some odd pages if we had done it that way.
Therefore, I'll move the approval of the opinion as written.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? See that the motion has been properly adopted.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to item number 7 on the agenda, consists of 2 financial disclosure fine cases where, after a final order imposing the fine, it is recommended that we declare the fine uncollectible. Both of these in the cases, the filers have passed away. Are there any questions from the members, or do I hear a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
So if see it properly moved, second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? See it properly adopted. All right, moving on to item number 8. The reports are on the next item. We're going to take things out of schedule, out of order. We're going to discuss the litigation update first. Steve, you are recognized.
Commissioners, thank you. I will be brief here on this. I want to discuss briefly with you a small update in the Garcia versus Stillman federal litigation. I don't intend to have a discussion here about strategy. I don't intend to update you on technically what's happening in the courts. There's a different update that requires your input. Karen Brodeen is our lead counsel in the matter. She is a special counsel with the Attorney General's office. She has been representing us and leading the team that is representing us on the trial side of this, and she's also, I believe, leading the efforts that we're taking on the stay, which are being undertaken mostly by the Solicitor General's office. Karen Brodeen is pursuing and has been offered another opportunity in the Attorney General's office, a promotional opportunity to be a litigator in the Medicaid Control Unit, which is the way that unit is funded. It prevents its attorneys from taking on any other clients and pursuing other representations. So she would need to end her representation of us. Another attorney will be appointed imminently. I am told that decision is being made. But Karen needs to submit a notice of withdrawal of representation. She would like to be able to indicate that her clients, which are you, among others, that her clients consent to her withdrawal. What I would be asking for today is that you would approve a motion to consent to her withdrawal to allow another attorney from the Attorney General's office to continue to represent us in this very important case.
Second.
Hearing that it's been properly moved and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? C is properly adopted. Thank you. Now moving on to our Executive Director report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For once, I don't think I have anything to add to my written Executive Director's report, so with your permission, I'd like to move into the legislative report and then e-filing.
Go right ahead.
Okay, to start the legislative report, I want to talk about the General Appropriations Act and the Commission's appropriation as it stands. I'm going to start by saying the Commission will have sufficient funds to meet its proposed budget meetings through a combination of the appropriation as well as carry forward funds. Both chambers have the Commission with a total lump sum of $3,016,477. This is more than the $2,996,055 that we requested. The total amount includes the amount to transfer to DOA. In our proposed budget, I did not yet have the DOA amount, and so I, as a placeholder, put in last year's rate, which was a little under $67,000. However, when DOA submitted their budget request, which the amount they charged to us is based on fiscal year 21-22, the amount that appeared in the budget was $166,487. A quick math action by me meant that our appropriation was actually just under $100,000 less than what we requested for both the Commission and the Commission agency. Likewise, the Executive Branch Trust Fund appropriation sits at $186,385,000, which is $39,116 less than we sought. The reason for our increased budget request was our OPS budget for Executive Branch to cover the lobbyist audit costs, because I had to use carry forward this year. The increase in our main budget was through the OPS budget due to litigation increases, as well as us needing to replace the car. So I reached out to House and Senate staff of leadership. I also spoke to appropriations staff members and to inquire about what this meant. And they said that they believe that through this appropriation, which represents a continuation budget, together with our carry forward funds, that the Commission will be able to carry out all of the things that it sought to do when it submitted its proposed budget. So in other words, the CAR doesn't come from the actual budget, the CAR comes from carry forward funds. the dollars we need to pay for attorneys in terms of the litigation and any other litigation costs, would be seen as one time rather than recurring costs. Those would also come out of carry forward. So regarding the DOA cost, which was shocking to me, I have reached out to DOA to discuss those calculations, and I have a meeting with them next week to inquire about how that number came to be and why the big jump. As I briefly have come to understand, it has to do with the number of cases that we send over. During 21-22, we sent over one case in particular that had, 19, 20, maybe 21 complaints that we consolidated into one act and one case, but when we send it over, they require that we send them separately, so I'm trying to see if that's what happened and if any adjustments need to be made as a result. If any adjustments are made to the DOA number, that would not affect the situation where we will use our budget, our lump sum appropriations, as well as carry forward to handle our business in the coming fiscal year. So, turning to regular legislation, Senate Bill 620 is the bill that adds special districts to the ethics training requirement, and it adds clarity to the exemption language to the conflicting contractual relationship exemption for certain special districts. It's on second reading calendar. The House Bill 199 is identical, also on second reading. Those seem to be poised to make it. There are a few bills that create new boards that would be subject to the Code of Ethics, and a number of bills involving public records exemption that we're tracking for financial disclosure and confidentiality application. But the main show is, of course, Senate Bill 774 and House Bill 37. 774 passed the Senate floor. I think it was 35 to 5. It was sent over to the House. I received a notification last night through the system that 774 was not only referred to the House calendar, but it's had its first reading. House Bill 37 is nearly identical to 774, and it was listed as being on the second reading. Both bills contain, I think, 5 items that were recommendations in your legislative recommendations this year: the dismissal of de minimis financial disclosure complaints, the ability for the commission to dismiss a lobbyist audit matter due to the public interest not being served by further proceedings, increasing civil penalties from $10,000 to $20,000, the glitch fix for training for CRA members, and finally and significantly, the enhanced financial disclosure that would require city commissioners and mayors to file Form 6 instead of Form 1, beginning Jan 1, 2024. Not in your recommendations, but a policy choice of the legislature, was a change to the executive branch lobbying laws that adds a requirement relating to the intentional failure to disclose a material fact or knowingly submitting false information in a compensation report in order for the commission to investigate that complaint or proceeding as a part of a lobbyist audit. Also not in your legislative recs, but in the bill is, of course, as we know, language requiring the commission to have the e-filing system accept document uploads, which was something we have already launched. A significant change in terms of e-filing is the change in the bill that would require the system to allow filers to file a copy of their tax return and all the attachments in lieu of reporting income. That change would become effective upon becoming law, which means during this filing season. That was a big desire of the House and Senate. So finally, the House and Senate bills, like I said, are very, very close. They differ slightly in a significant way for the members of this commission. The Senate bill contains language that would require you as members of the commission to file a Form 6 rather than a Form 1 beginning Jan 1, 2024. And so with that, I am open to any questions, discussion, or otherwise that members might have about any of this.
Mr. Chairman?
Sir.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to compliment Carrie and Steve for the good work they've done in teeing up what appears to be a very good potential outcome for our legislative agenda in the legislature this year. As we all know, it ain't over till it's all over. So I don't want to, say something that could throw us off. But I will say that if these measures are passed, it is, by my reckoning, the first time in a long time that the commission has been successful in moving a legislative agenda. And I certainly want to give credit to President Passidomo and Speaker Renner, who have been very open to our issues this year. But I particularly want to thank Carrie and Steve for their excellent testimony and for their work behind the scenes with committee staff, hand-holding to make sure we got to where we were. I'd also like to mention, Mr. Chairman, that I believe that it is appropriate that we ought to file Form 6s. If we are in our legislative recommendations, asking that Form 6s become almost universal for elected public officials. And I grant you that this commission is a commission, and there are other commissions that file Form 1s, even if this legislative package passes as it is. We, in effect, are kind of preaching to the choir here, and I think that we would be well served if this board went on record, and at the appropriate time, with the chair's permission, I would offer a motion that we support the Senate position that the Commission on Ethics members file Form 6, and that we do it so willingly.
I just didn't hear the very last, and that we do what?
And that we do so willingly, that we don't have to be dragooned into it by the legislature, but that
I just didn't hear the
we
word.
see
It's fine.
we see the equity here, and that we recognize and acknowledge it.
Okay. Any other members, comments, questions?
I'll second if that was a motion.
If agreeable to the chair, that's a motion.
Okay, so you hear a motion on, is there a second for the motion?
Yes.
All right, any other discussions? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Seeing that it properly removed and adopted. All right. Any other items you want to discuss, Madam Executive Director?
If there aren't any other questions about the legislative report, I will proceed with the e-filing report.
Okay.
Okay, so far this year, there have been 199 Form 6s, 2022 Form 6s filed, and 9 Form 6Xs, which are the amendment forms, filed through the Electronic Financial Disclosure Management System, fondly known as EFDMS. So we have a total of 208 forms filed in 2023 so far electronically. On April 11th, we sent an invitation to register to all Form 6 filers and encourage them to go ahead, log in, and get familiar with the system. Just prior to those emails going out, we did an old-fashioned flyer mailed by U.S. mail with some helpful tips and information about the system, letting them know that this email was coming, to invite them to register, and encouraging them to do so. We plan to send the official notification of the filing requirement, the statutorily required notice, as soon as May 8th. This is sooner than we normally do, again, with the goal being that we want to encourage people to get on in there and start doing it now so we can handle any issues and help them get familiar with the system prior to the glut that is inevitable at the end of June. There are still 4 major technical issues that we are working through and addressing during this filing season with the technical team. That is, the public search is being rewritten, where the public can go to the website and pull up disclosure forms. We want to make sure that it is pulling all of the appropriate forms, be they a 6, a 6F, or a 6X. because this will be the first year that it's feeding from the system. Last year, we had to do it manually because of the pause. They're also addressing something called the preferred filing requirement selection. We call that the PFR. This is how the system selects which position is the primary filing requirement for the official and what information the system is using to contact that person. Some people serve on one board, some on 2, some on 10. The system has to be able to prioritize the filing requirement, and that is tremendously complicated, and it has been a difficult road there. Also, the merge of duplicate filers, if I'm getting that right, that is, we get a lot of information from coordinators. Sometimes you have to figure out whether this is the same person or a different person, they have the same name. That is a complex process. Not to mention the completion of Form 1 and Form 2 in the system so that those can be submitted. And now, including the programming and implementation of 774, with the ability to have filers check a box to file their income tax in lieu of reporting income, because that's going to route them differently through the system, because they won't need to fill out the income portion if they check that box. They get routed differently. Then the system has to expect the upload of that tax return. So there's additional programming that has to take place for that. Those are the items that we have determined to be critical, that we must have in place for testing for the launch of Form 1, which is currently scheduled to take place Jan 1 of 2024. And as you know, and as we have talked about, that brings roughly another 38,000 people into the system. The current timeline that we are working with has each of these 5 things being completed before the user acceptance testing is set to begin September 1. We've identified September 1 as a critical date to be able to have the system as it's going to be, and for us to accurately test the functionality of the system, give us adequate time to address any bugs or glitches, prepare training materials, not only for our staff, but for filers, and have everything in place to do as much as we can to ensure a smooth launch Jan 1. It's been a winding road on this project, as you all know if you've been with us for the last few years. It was originally coded for a streamlined filing process without doc uploads, so that the electronic filing process would be less complicated and easier to implement. Since then, everything has changed. This is a very different system than what we launched last year. The addition of doc uploads, the pause, the restart, the data migration have significantly changed sort of the complexion of this project and its complexity. It's created unique technical challenges that the IT team has had to overcome, despite having changes in their staff, including recently a change in the team lead, and significantly recently, the lead programmer resigned their position, so we're a person down. So far, over 3,000 programming items, or what they call stories, have been completed in terms of priority and critical items for UAT. There are 78 programming items or stories that have been completed. At least 65 remain for those critical 5 items. And those are the things we know about now. There will be definitely more stories added as we move through the filing season. So those stories relate to doc upload, form changes, merge, and public search, and the primary filing requirement information. You'll note that much of this are the back-end things that the commission deals with. The priorities have been and remain the filer interface and the filing process to make that smooth for the filing. Any functionality that we're unable to complete in reality means that the commission staff will have to devise workarounds. There's complex logic behind the critical items. It requires many weeks to months of development and testing to make sure that when we deploy the fix, that it doesn't create any new issues in the system. You all know, when you roll out big computer systems, you fix one thing, it can break another. So, in addition to having to implement 774 and make sure that that is functional and ready in the event that it is signed into law, in addition to the other critical items, and the Form 6 filing season where we do not know what might come up, there is a likelihood that we're going to have to delay the user acceptance testing, potentially into October, in order to get everything done that we need to get done. It's also possible that staff will have to start to make some very tough decisions about what we're going to have versus what we're not going to have. The challenge has always been that if you looked at this on a pie chart, the simplest part is the forms, and that's, maybe 25% of the project, and the rest of it is all the back-end stuff that we need to do. The complexity of this system is deceptive. You look at it on its face, it looks easy, should be able to be simply done, and that is not the reality. This Form 1 launch is a huge task for our small agency. It would be a big project for even a large agency. And the team has worked very, very hard. We have supreme confidence in the tech team that we have and their ability to deliver the things that they have promised to us. The new team lead has been very robust in her analysis of the system and what remains possible with the team that they have. We expect glitches, big and small. That's just the nature of a rollout of a big project. In a perfect world, everything would be done and things would go smoothly. That is never the case. We are preparing for the unexpected. We expect it to be hard. We plan to augment our staff. We plan to provide excellent customer service to Form 6 filers during this filing season, as well as continue to handle our day-to-day regular work. We are sort of reimagining our various workflows to figure out the most efficient way as we move forward. It's a close call in terms of what do we do? Do we push or do we stay? It is something that we have wrestled with. I have wrestled with. I have talked to the tech team numerous times, talked to House and Senate IT, talked to the team lead. But I've come to understand that there's not much appetite downtown for pushing the Form 1 launch date, and there is confidence that the Form 1 will be ready and can be launched. The back end might be imperfect, but that it can be done. And so that is what we are preparing to do. House and Senate IT have indicated that they will commit resources from their office to assist us with the technology during this filing season, as is necessitated. The OLITS director, OLITS is the joint legislative IT team that works with us. They're working to fill vacancies and assist us with training materials and testing of the system so the testing is robust and we identify any possible issues far in advance so we can fix them before lunch, not before lunch. Guess who? Guess who's hungry? So we are also looking at best practices in terms of call centers and augmenting staff for the Jan 1, 2024 launch. So I am open to any questions you might have and any discussion that you'd like to have about the e-filing system, the current filing season that we are up against, and the launch of Form 1s that appears to be Jan 1, 2024.
Members, any questions? Sir?
Question, because actually we had this issue on the, earlier on one of the items. Does the form have certain required fields that people can't go by? For instance, the threshold of whether you're using comparative or you're using actual numbers. Is that something that you get rid of, that issue?
Through the chair. Currently, there are comparative or dollar value thresholds with the Form 1. On paper, you must check the box, as you all know, which method you're using to file their form. With the advent of e-filing, it will be the dollar value threshold only. The comparative threshold will not be a part of that. That was a part of the thought process and the design and the streamlining. Rather than having two different Form 1s based on what method of disclosure, there's one way to do it. But there are business rules. When we talk about the Form 6 and the Form 1, we did design the system to have certain business rules to help filers avoid certain pitfalls. Making sure that if it says, it's more than $1,000, that the number they're entering is more than $1,000. Making sure that if they've left a section blank, that they indicate that that was intentional, or that they have check a box to say they have an upload of documents to provide for that particular section. So when we built it, we tried to put in things to help filers have an easier time complying and avoid inadvertently forgetting to provide information. There are lots of reminders. Are you sure you want to do this? You can't go forward until you fix it, so.
Members, any questions? Any other comments? Madam Executive Director, thank you for your report. All right, that brings us to the end of our meeting, and Commissioner Wallman moved that we adjourn. Thank you, everyone.